So welcome back. This is another episode of Healing America's Narrative, speaking specifically about the Vietnam War in the larger context of where we are in the 21st century in the United States. And we mentioned that both President Truman and President Eisenhower helped fund the French attempt to recolonize Vietnam after the end of World War II, and the French stopped trying after a horrible defeat in 1954. To set the context for what happened next, and really what continued to happen throughout the end of the 20th century and into the 21st century, I want to refer back to a speech that President Eisenhower made to the American Society of Newspaper Editors in April 1953. The speech is generally referred to historically now as the Cross of Iron speech, but it was actually referred to as the Chance for Peace speech when it was written and spoken. And it spoke specifically to a celebration of the end of World War II and Eisenhower's and Americans in general and allies in Europe's in general concerns about the Soviet Union's post-war behaviors. And the speech really argues against both the costs of war and the need for hope, freedom, and democracy. I want to zero in on one specific aspect of the speech that isn't as famous as the Cross of Iron part, but is really going to inform what happens over the next half century in the United States. So Eisenhower presented 5 precepts in the speech that he felt were indicative of the way the United States was going to operate and did operate in the world. So here are the 5 precepts that President Eisenhower delivered in 1953. First, no people on earth can be held as a people to be enemy, for all humanity shares the common hunger for peace and fellowship and justice. Second, no nation's security and well-being can be lastingly achieved in isolation, but only in effective cooperation with fellow nations. Third, any nation's right to form of government and economic system of its own choosing is inalienable. Fourth, any nation's attempt to dictate to other nations their form of government is indefensible. And fifth, a nation's hope of lasting peace cannot be firmly based upon any race in armaments, but rather upon just relations and honest understanding with all other nations. Now, effectively, what the country did after Eisenhower spoke those 5 precepts was to virtually immediately violate precepts 1, 3, 4, and 5 and enter into an ongoing debate about precept number 2, which is effectively a precept speaking about the difference between isolation and intervention. Again, I'll read that second one again. No nation's security and well-being can be lastingly achieved in isolation, but only in effective cooperation with fellow nations. And the United States, over the years, has taken steps going to the extreme at times of each of those, both isolation and intervention. So we'll see how Eisenhower's precepts play into the subsequent history of the United States, first in Vietnam, and then we'll see more recently the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, which will be covered in subsequent conversations and subsequent chapters in the book. All right, so thank you again, as always, for tuning in, and I will see you the next time.